Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. A warm welcome to anyone who's new to this channel, and a warm welcome back to any of my frequent flyers and subscribers, return viewers. So, just would like to acknowledge I started this. I don't like the word late. I said I was going to start it 11 minutes ago, and here I am starting it now. Life is tricky, or I don't want to say life is tricky. Life is tricky. This is a school. Bruno Groening was very clear that this is a school, and he also said that words have an exact meaning and power. So something like, "Oh, I'm late," that's actually a very stressful word. As I was driving here, knowing I was going to be late, I began to feel some stress and some tension, and that didn't feel good. And so what was behind that stress and tension? Was it the fact that I was not going to be able to start the broadcast on the time that I had announced that I would? On the surface, it might appear that way. We like to think Humans have the habit, I have the habit, most people have the habit of thinking that external circumstances determine our feelings. But actually, it's so much more our thoughts. Yes, of course, external events have impact on us, but it's our thinking. And fundamentally, there's a little background noise. Please let me know if it's hard to hear. It comes down to faith or lack of faith. So here I am driving. Let's backtrack a few minutes. There I am driving, pretty certain that I was not going to be able to start the broadcast at the time I said I would. But if I was in faith, then I wouldn't worry about it. Then I wouldn't take on stress. Then I wouldn't take on the negative thoughts of, "Oh no, I said this time. Oh no, they're going to be mad. Oh no, I'm failing in my responsibility." That's how evil operates. It's still hard for me to fathom. Bruno Groening said, we don't generate thoughts, we receive them. And some of those thoughts I just shared were some of the exact thoughts I experienced as I was, rushing. And rushing doesn't feel good. Luckily, I was able to catch the thoughts and be aware of the feelings, give the thoughts away, take on faith. But it was still unpleasant. There was still a little background lack of faith, lack of trust that everything is okay and everything will be okay. And actually, first of all, I made it home safe and sound. Everything's okay. I started the broadcast. The broadcast is going. Right now, there's 4 of us, including me. Everything's okay. And because of the time at which I arrived, I just got to meet 2 of my neighbors and got to have a really fun interaction with one of them and a sweet interaction with another. All because I was, quote, supposedly, quote, late. Human timing is not the same as divine timing. Bruno Groening would show, and this is not to justify what happened, but Bruno Groening, he would be expected at 7 p.m. and then he'd show up at 11 or 11:30 or sometimes even later. He followed a different guidance system. We human beings have taken on the habit, and yes, within with certain things, it's really essential. For catching a plane, for example, or showing up at work. There's just some things within our modern society that are dependent on time, but there's a lot of things that aren't. You're all big boys and girls. You don't need, there's kind of this feeling of like, I had thoughts like, oh no, they're not going to be okay, or something ridiculous like that. All of you can you know, all of you will be fine in between the, I think I started maybe 6 minutes, 11 minutes past when I said I was going to. All of you will be fine for 6 minutes. I hope, I think, I believe, I trust. So, with that said, my apologies for starting. I always like to acknowledge when I say I'm going to do something and I do something else. And here we are. And so from all this, what I was reminded of is evil is persistent. Evil, Bruno Groening said, evil will constantly attack you. And so here we go. Here was a kind of an open doorway, because I'm a little, as they say, anal retentive about being on time. It's a good skill to be able to be on time, but to be obsessed with it, to stress over it, that's not a good habit. And so because I have this habit, which is not a good habit, which I'm now handing over, that's kind of like an entryway for the evil. It makes me vulnerable. Like if I was just relaxed and like, oh, everything will work out, those thoughts might come, evil might send those thoughts like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late, or oh my gosh, people are going to be mad, but if I was in the place of everything's going to be okay, then those thoughts would just bounce right off. But because now I've given it away, because I had that over fixation on being on time, that left me a little extra vulnerable. But luckily I caught it, and I didn't let my stress level get too high. I just kept coming back to faith and giving the thoughts away, and just doing other basic self-care things that help me stay relaxed and be in the moment. Yes, so thank you everyone for joining in. Hi Jisoo. Hey Magdalena. We've got an emoji party going on. So let's take in some good divine energy. Having the will, the intention to receive, noticing what you feel. Handing over any bad habits, any and then taking in the good. Taking in divine life energy, natural life energy. Here's a quote from Bruno. And you must really open yourself to the good. Devote yourself to God. And you must take in the true divine transmission within yourself. And you must really open yourself to the good. Devote yourself to God. And you must take in the true divine transmission within yourself. So it's very important. I don't hear that talked about so much, that we really need to open to receive. And of course, I wasn't really taught this, but this idea of devoting ourselves to God, it really, see, the thing is, Bruno Groening didn't talk a lot about healing. Most people, when they think of Bruno Groening, they think, oh, the great healer. But if you read any of his speeches, healing is only 3 to 4% of what he talks about, if even that. Sometimes it's just a few sentences, sometimes a little more. I'm just estimating, maybe it's 5%. But he rarely talks about healing. He does talk about the process of healing, but meaning, and by that what I mean is living a good life and what's needed to bring the body back in order. But even, he doesn't really focus on physical healings. What he focuses on is being devoted to God. And he once said, physical healings are only 10% of my work. So, to be devoted to God. So if you want physical healing, so first of all, just encountering Bruno Groening and tuning in, sometimes that's enough for a healing to happen. I mean, there are many people who just went and saw Bruno Groening, and there are many people who, just see a picture of him or go to a few meetings or do a little tuning in, and they have a healing. I met someone who, he went to see the documentary film about Bruno Groening, fell asleep during it, and had a healing. And this guy fell asleep. This was his knees were injured in a motorcycle accident. This was not like, a stubbed toe got healed. This is something he had had for 20 years. I met someone else who had their depression cured through watching the documentary film. So those kind of healings, that does happen. And that's a part of this path. But it's only a part. So to be devoted to God, that, for me, that's really what the teachings of Bruno Groening are about. And physical healings are a side effect. So there are many, many paths to be devoted to God. And each person has to find the path that resonates with them. Greta Hausler said that Bruno Groening's vision was not to start a new religion. Bruno Groening's vision was that the churches and temples be full of people loving God and serving God. And when speaking about religion, Bruno said it's not enough, for example, speaking about Christianity, it's not enough to say I'm a Christian or I believe. It takes much more than that. He spoke about acting on your beliefs. So someone who shares this information, I feel I'm being negligent. And that's why you may notice, I don't talk about healing very much on this channel. I mean, I do talk about it a little bit, but it's not my main emphasis. And one of the reasons was because I experienced all these healings, but I wasn't taught, or I wasn't taught or wasn't able to hear the fundamental ideas of the necessity of being very devoted to your spiritual path. Bruno said it simply, as I already said today, evil will constantly attack you on your life's path. God doesn't need our devotion. We need our devotion. We need our devotion to God so that we can have a good life. Otherwise, we're just going to be constantly dragged down. I sometimes feel I talk about evil too much, and I sometimes feel I don't talk about it enough. Because without this understanding that, in 1959, Bruno Groening, I'll have to paraphrase, but he said, things are so bad on this planet, it's barely possible for people to live. That was 1959. A few things have happened since then. A few things have gone down. To be on this planet now is to be under stress just for being here, unless you live on an island somewhere. So I'm sad to say I have another time commitment, and so today's going to be a little shorter than I normally like. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to share these teachings, to practice them a little bit, to tune in together, and to encourage. I haven't mastered any of these teachings. I practice, strive, struggle, make progress, make mistakes every day. But I'm very delighted to have found this quote of Bruno's where he calls us to be devoted to God. Devote yourself to God. So I think that's an absolute fundamental of this path. Thank you so much for joining in. I wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful morning, afternoon, and evening. Take care.